Rather than worry about making the right decision, we should make the decision right. There's no way of knowing if the decision that you've made is the right decision.
Welcome back to the Running Wine Mom podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Cieslinski, aka the Running Wine Mom. My guest today is Dr. Ellen Langer, psychologist, professor at Harvard, and often referred to as the mother of mindfulness. But her definition of mindfulness, it's not what you are thinking. She's not talking about meditation or breath work, but about something radically simple and powerful, noticing. In her book, The Mindful Body, she explores the idea that the mind and body aren't connected. They're actually one and the same. We talk about how labels can actually make people sicker, why imagination can change your biology, and how language shapes our health, and how letting go of certainty might just be the key to feeling better. And of course, we'll get into play, stress, and why it might be time to rethink everything we thought we knew about illness and control. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Ellen Langer. Welcome.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderful introduction. I don't really need to say anything else.
Well, I am such a fan of you. I'm so excited. Your books are amazing. I can't wait to get into it. But before we start each episode, we have our wine, and win of the week segment. This is where we share our favorite bottle of wine, vent about something that's been bothering us, and celebrate our recent victories. So grab a glass, take a deep breath, and let's get started. So what is your wine, W-I-N-E of the week?
Let me say Casa Madera, which is Mexican Cabernet.
Oh, that is delicious. I've never had or heard of it, but I'm going to have to add it to my list. And what is your W-H-I-N-E of the week?
I don't do a W-H-I-N-E, which is why I answered without the H.
So
there are times that whining buys you something. And so when you're whining because you know it's going to be effective, that's fine. But whining is basically a sign that you have no control. And I don't typically feel that way.
It's so funny that you answer that way, because in all my podcasts, I obviously start with these few prompts. And I said, I wonder if she's going to even have one, or if she's just going to say, nope, I don't have any. I love that. So what is your win of the week?
I just played tennis, and winning was not the important thing. The fact that I had 2 or 3 marvelous shots. And I don't tend to pay attention to the ones that I miss. So it was on whole a victory.
I love that. So besides tennis, what's your favorite way to stay active?
I do a lot of walking, I swim, and a lot of tennis.
That's great. All right, so let's get into it. I have been reading and listening to your books over the last few months, and I've been a fan of you prior to this as well. But you have said the mind and body are one thing. Yeah. When did the shift from a theory to something that you truly believed?
No, I truly believed it right from the start when it occurred to me. You know, that I did some research back in the early 70s where we gave elderly people choices, decisions to make, and tried to increase their control over their environment, and they lived longer. And how could that happen? How can you get from a thought to something material? And the reason you can't is because you have a conception of a mind and a body. How do they talk to each other? Samantha, I've been talking about mind-body unity since 1979. Yeah. Okay. So, and I've had some effect on the world, but it takes a very...
just a little.
So people went from thinking we had a mind and a body to then talk about a mind-body connection. And that's fine, except you have the same problem. How are they connected? And so I said a long time ago, let's just look at it as a single unit and see how far that can take us. Now, I had when I started to write The Mindful Body, I was first writing it as a memoir. So there are lots of personal stories there. But the seeds to the theory were born ages ago. So I was married, I was obscenely young. And my then husband and I went to Paris on a honeymoon. And we're in a restaurant and I order a mixed grill. And on the mixed grill was pancreas. He was more worldly than I. I said, which of these is the pancreas? He points to something. I eat everything else with gusto. Now comes the moment of truth. To this day, I think it's bizarre. Why did I think just because I was married, it meant I had to eat the pancreas? But that's what I thought. I start eating it and I literally get sick. He starts laughing. I say, why are you laughing? Inappropriate and, on your honeymoon? And he said, because That was chicken. I ate the pancreas a long time ago. So my mind thought it was pancreas. My mind made me sick. The other pancreas story I tell in The Mindful Body, my mother had breast cancer that had metastasized to her pancreas, and that's the end game. And then magically it was gone. So here we have the essence of a theory. I made myself sick. Somehow magically she made herself well. The medical world couldn't explain it. And we've all had instances of this. Have you ever walked down the street in the fall or the winter and a leaf blows in your face and you get startled? Your blood pressure and pulse increase until you say, oh, it was just a leaf.
Right.
So nothing happened, but we imagined that it did, and then our bodies changed. Or you see somebody vomiting and you yourself feel like you're going to start to throw up. So, I mean, I think everybody has had these experiences, and all I'm doing is saying, well, if we think about this and we take the mind and the body, we see them as one, imagine the control we have now. Because wherever we put the mind, we're necessarily putting the body. So the very first study we did to test this mind-body unity was a famous study. How can she call one of her own studies famous? It's because if you tune into The Simpsons Go to Havana, they talk about the study. So you know you've made The Simpsons are talking about your work. Anyway, we retrofitted a retreat so it seemed to be 20 years earlier and had elderly men live there as if they were their younger selves. So they spoke about past events as if they were just unfolding. It wasn't quite a Hollywood set, but it was as good as I could make it on a low budget. Anyway, the results were remarkable. Their hearing improved, their vision improved, their memory, their strength, and they looked noticeably younger. And that was the beginning of all the mind-body unity studies, many filling the pages of the Mindful Body. We'll go to the very last ones. I told you the first one. If you want, we can talk about some in between. There's so much for that. But the last one I did with my graduate student, Peter Ungle, we inflict a wound. It's not a big wound because I'm not a sadist, but it's a wound. And you're in front of a clock. People are run individually. Unknowns to them, the clock is rigged. So for a third of the people, the clock is going twice as fast as real time. For a third of the people, it's going half as fast as real time. For a third of the people, it's real time. Now, without the idea of mind-body unity, one would assume that wound is going to heal when the wound heals. But that's not what happened. The wound healed based on perceived time, what that clock said it was. So we have so many studies across different diseases. So I'm persuaded. One should not be certain about anything, and I think that our strongest medication, placebos.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is a placebo? You take a nothing, you think it's something, and then you're cured. And it's fabulously effective. It's interesting that we didn't harness the effectiveness of placebos over all the many decades that the medical world has been using them. And they got a bad name. So if somebody suffers and you give them a pill and they feel better and you say it was a placebo, no, the pain was real. Yes, the pain was real. And that's just the reason for that, if you want me to tell you,
go ahead.
So the pharmaceutical world. So if they want to bring a drug to market, they have to test it, and the drug has to outperform a placebo. Right? If it doesn't, they can't bring the drug to market and make millions of dollars. So for them, food or the placebo. But for the rest of us, it's phenomenal. And so the book is full of not just these studies, but a host of others explaining the things that we can do that most people are oblivious to.
Yeah, and when you were telling the pancreas story, when I was reading the book, I was thinking about when I was younger and we were on vacation and my dad ordered fried calamari, but they were more like rings. And he said, "Oh, I got onion rings for you guys. You guys are going to love them." So we're sitting there eating them. And after we finished the whole plate, he says, "That was actually calamari." And my sister immediately was like, "Hey, this is so gross." And I was like, huh, I didn't even know the difference. So I was thinking, the same thing, not the, but
we've all had those experiences. I mean, if you are expecting grapefruit juice and somebody gives you pineapple juice, which you ordinarily would love, it's sweet and whatever.
Yeah. You get that
exactly.
Yeah. So a lot of people nowadays, mindfulness is such a buzzword, but a lot of people think you have to meditate, you have to be in a dark
Yeah.
room, but you kind of talk about it
No,
as
no. So
just,
people need to understand that I've been studying this for 50 years. So
yeah.
I'm not new to it. And I also did some of the early work on meditation. Meditation is fine. It's a wonderful practice, but it's just not the same thing. Meditation is not mindfulness. Meditation is a practice you undergo, hopefully to result in post-meditative mindfulness.
Hmm.
Mindfulness, as we study it, is more immediate and it's not a practice. You don't cut yourself off from the world and whatever. There are two ways actually of becoming mindful that have nothing to do with meditation. One is top down, the other bottom up. What does that mean? Top down means theoretically driven or whatever. So if you recognize that you don't know anything for sure, now people, what is she talking about? They think they know things for sure, but everything looks different from different perspectives and everything is always changing. So we don't know. So Samantha, you didn't introduce me. People need to know I was an A plus 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 student when I was your age and before. So thought I knew everything. I was at this horse event and this man asked me, can I watch his horse for him? Because he wants to get his horse a hot dog. What is he, crazy? Horses don't eat me. He brought back the hot dog and the horse ate it. And that's when I realized that everything I thought I knew could be wrong. Now, oftentimes when you find out you're wrong or you could be wrong, people worry. To me, it was exciting because it meant,
Right.
Opened up a whole plethora of possibilities. And, and it made me think, and I discussed this in the book, people don't realize that the absolutes, most of them coming from science, science can't give you an absolute. When you do an experiment, what you're saying essentially is if I did the exact same thing again, which you can never do, you're older, right? Again, I'm likely to get the same findings. That's translated as absolutes. Not most horses under these circumstances, when you're giving them this kind of green mixed with this kind of, no, it's horses don't eat meat because the other would be just a mouthful. All right. So now what does that mean? So now you know that if you really accept that you don't know anything, first of all, words like obviously and the way we look at other people, how could you be so stupid? You're going to get your horse a hot dog. All of that goes by the by. But it also gives us all sorts of choices. Now, when I do these lectures in person, one of my favorite things to do is to ask people. So I'll ask you, Samantha, how much is 1 plus 1? Because this is the thing everybody is most certain of, right?
Well, I always thought it was 2 until I read your book.
Okay, that's good enough. Now, 1 and 1 is 2 if you're using a base 10 number system. Most people are not aware that there are different number systems. If you use a base 2 number system, 1 plus 1 is written as 10. Who cares about number systems? If you take 1 watt of chewing gum and you add 1 watt of chewing gum, 1 plus 1 is 1. You take 1 pile of laundry, add 1 pile of laundry, 1 plus 1 is 1. You take 1 cloud and you add 1 cloud. In the real world, 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2, as or more often as it does. So now somebody comes up to you, not likely, and they say, Samantha, how much is 1 plus 1? All of a sudden you have choices. You could say 1, 2, 10.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you're mindless, when you think you know, you don't have any choices. And
Right.
people, so I was on a program the other day talking about emotion, and I was surprised that I hadn't said this particular thing that I'm going to say, if I can get out of my own way, that I hadn't said it earlier. If you think of robots, can a robot be happy? No, of course not, right? And when we're being mindless, we're no different from robots. And so I was talking, I didn't finish the how to become more mindful. So one is realizing you don't know. If you don't know, everything is new. And you don't feel bad about not knowing because nobody knows. Usually the man who's trying to intimidate you, you are no longer intimidated because deep down now you know he doesn't know either. The other way is bottom up. So walk outside and notice 3 new things. Now you've walked that walk, day after day, but still you're not noticing half of what's there. Take, next time you see a friend or if you're living with somebody, notice 3 new things about them. There's nothing sacred about 3, 5, 2, whatever. Each time you notice new things about something you thought you knew, you come to see you didn't really know it at all. And so you're starting to learn that, hey, I don't know these things. And life
Right.
is fun.
And that's something that I just really admire about everything, all the research that I've done around you is that you are okay with not knowing everything. You are one of probably the smartest people that I'll ever come in contact with, yet you are okay with the fact that you want
Well,
to
you see,
learn more.
yeah, you don't, you can't know because
Right.
knowing holds things still
Right.
and everything is changing. So what you knew might have been true a moment before, but you can't know if it'll be true. But the freeing thing, Samantha, is recognizing that nobody knows.
Right.
When you think you don't know, then, oh God, somebody's going to find out I'm an idiot. It can be very stressful, right? But when you
Yes.
know, I don't know, you don't know, nobody knows for sure. We can't know for sure. And then not knowing, frees us.
Right.
And another thing about knowing, because I know at some point you're going to ask me about stress.
Yes.
Why is it so important that we know? And we keep trying to hold things still so that we can feel some control over them.
Hmm.
And the reason we feel that we need to have control over them is because we don't realize the actual control we have over all outcomes that result. Events don't cause stress. Events aren't good, bad. The events are nothing. They are only what we make them. And when
Right.
you recognize that, everything that seems negative can easily, or eventually, if you do this long enough, easily turned around and be experienced as positive. So for me, I don't have to know because what is the cost in not knowing? It'll just be exciting. And
Yeah.
that if something happens, like, oh, I didn't realize I have my computer now on these books, and let's say I didn't realize them, the computer tips, so what?
Right.
We get disconnected, we'll call back, you'll call back, we will reschedule it. That people need to ask themselves when something happens, is it a tragedy or an inconvenience? It's almost never a tragedy. And so
Right.
then you just breathe and go on with things.
Yeah, it's so true. And then you gave the example when you're with your house fire as well. That was
Yeah.
something that,
Well, this was very big because most of the things that people are worried about, get stressed about, I think are minor. They're
right.
what some of my friends call champagne problems.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
say, is it a tragedy? No, it's not. I missed the boat, the bus or the boat. I didn't get the project done in time. I tore my jacket and I was just going to, who cares?
Right.
And the older you get, the more you realize how silly so many of these things that we worried about when we were younger are. But, this was actually a reasonably big thing.
Yeah.
It was a couple of decades ago. And I was at a friend's house for dinner, and I am an early person, but this particular time I came back, must have been close to 12 at night. And all of my neighbors were outside. Why? Because my house had burned. And, several interesting parts about it. One that comes to mind, it's almost irrelevant, but it was cute. When I spoke to the firemen, they said they couldn't save my parrot. I didn't have a parrot. So what I had was this stuffed bird that somebody gave me that was in a cage. But they didn't save my dogs, and that would have been terrible. They couldn't.
Yeah.
Then when I called the insurance agent, he came the next day and he said, this was the first, I'm not bragging. I see myself as sharing, although probably
Yeah.
bragging. Who knows?
No,
He
sharing.
said,
That's what this is
this
about.
was, he said, this was the first time in the 25 years that he's been doing the job where the damage was worse than the call. Most people,
Wow.
oh my God, oh my God. And he gets it, not so terrible.
Yeah.
For me, I had already lost everything. To throw
What
my
are you going to do?
sanity away after it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But the story gets really good. So I can't be in my house. I move into the Charles Hotel while my house is going to be rebuilt. Me and my 2 little dogs. It's a sight to be seen. Everybody knew me for whatever reason. I say hello to people. I'm reasonably friendly, and the dogs are adorable. Okay, so it's Christmas Eve. All of the presents that came to me were burned. All the presents I was going to send, everything was destroyed. Christmas Eve, I go out. I come back to the hotel room. The room is full of gifts,
Oh,
not from the owner of the hotel, not from the management, but from the so-called little people, the people who
wow.
park my cars, the chambermaids, the waiters. Samantha, it took me years to be able to tell that story without it bringing tears to my eyes.
I know. Like, I have chills.
Every single Christmas, I have a renewed faith in people because of that. And I don't really remember anything that I lost in the fire.
Yeah.
So net, it was actually a positive experience. Now, people should know I'm not saying, my God, my house, oh, well, who cares?
Right, right.
Obviously, I was scared and had a more normal reaction, but I didn't hold on to it. It didn't seem to make any sense to me to do so.
Yeah. I after reading about that a few months ago, someone hit my car. Well, it was parked. Like I was in the gym with my daughter and someone had hit my car. They left their number on it and I came out and saw that it was like there, whatever. And I thought, well, it's already hit and
Good for
they
you.
left their phone number. So let's go home. And I was like, wow, I actually feel as though
That's great.
that
But let me tell you something else. So if somebody hit my car, I get it fixed and then I fix something else. So at the end, it was a good thing they hit the car because now more of
there you
it
go.
is in good shape.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was helpful.
In addition to being mindful, you've studied imagined exercise and even like
Well, that's
imagined
one of the
eating.
that these are part of the mind body
Yeah.
unit studies. I'll talk about two of them quickly. So
Yeah.
the first study was the counterclockwise, bringing old men to a retreat, noon o'clock. The second one in that series I did with Ali Crum, who was my student at the time, now professor at Stanford. What we did was first we go to chambermaids. These are women, exercising all day long, right? Making beds and so on. We simply ask them, how much exercise are you getting? Well, surprisingly, they don't see themselves as getting exercise
Hmm.
because they think that exercise is what you do after work. And after work, they're too tired. So, a very simple study. We divide them into two groups. And we simply teach one group that their work was exercise. Making a bed is like working at this machine at the gym. Dusting the windows is like working at this, and so on. So now we have two groups, one that doesn't realize the work is exercise. The other group realizes change in mind. They're not working any harder, one group or the other. They're not eating any differently. We take a slew of measures to show this. Then for the important measures, those who changed their minds lost
Hmm.
weight. There was a
Wow.
change in waist to hip ratio, body mass index, and their blood pressure came down just by changing their minds. Yeah,
That's really
the
interesting.
diabetes study.
Right. That's
We take people who have type 2 diabetes and we take lots and lots of measures. Then we sit them down at a computer and there's a clock next to the computer. And we
mhm.
tell them we want them to play computer games, but switch the game you're playing every 15 minutes or so. That's just to ensure that they'll look at the clock.
Mhm.
Again, unbeknownst to them, the clock is rigged. So for a third of the people, it's going twice as fast as real time. For a third of the people, half as fast. And for a third of the people, it's real time. And the question we were asking was, would blood sugar level follow real or perceived, or you say imagined time? And it was perceived time. The control that diabetics can exercise over their health, I think, is far greater than most in the medical world believe. And we have study after study with this. We have people in a sleep lab. I'm clock crazy, I think. Not all of the studies.
I noticed that.
Third of them musically. It's a simple way of changing things. So they sleep, they wake up, they see the clock. The clock tells them they got 2 hours more sleep than they got, 2 hours fewer, or the
Hmm.
amount of sleep they got. Biological and cognitive function follow perceived amount of sleep. There was a study that Beach did. I think it was in the 50s, because we have a lot of studies in the book on fatigue. Fatigue as a psychological construct. You don't have to be tired. Okay. So what he did was he takes one little boy rat, introduces him to a little girl rat. They copulate until the little boy rat can't stand it. He just needs time to rest, a refractory period. Now, so that happens all the time. Boy rat, girl rat, the boy, after they copulate, the little boy's exhausted. However, if immediately after the two copulate, he introduces a new little girl rat, the boy
Hmm.
is ready to go all over.
Interesting.
Change the context. Sort of the human equivalent might be, your word processing all day long. You can't stand it. Everything hurts. I've got to get out of here. You go home, and what do? You play the piano. Same thing, only different. So the content.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so we've covered lots of diseases in the book, lots of things like fatigue, happiness. I think, there's a part of the book that I don't often talk about, but to me was very important. Now I talk now as if it's about better than better, and I think many people, many experts, help people to get from this bad place to a place that's better, and then they stop. And I'm interested in, let's go so far beyond that, where it's
Right.
even better.
Yeah.
And that takes us into lots of the happiness studies.
Yeah. And that's, well, I wanted to kind of talk about different, like, kind of going into happiness with the stress a little bit. As moms, we are constantly stressed and always making choices. You say that rules should kind of be a guide, not a govern. Like, what is one rule you'd love to see people kind of question in life in general?
I think all rules. What we need to understand is rules are made by rulers,
Yes.
that people are different. An example that is not really the parenting example, but it works anyway. So and when I'm lecturing in person, I might ask somebody in the audience, is there anybody here who's really tall? And some guy, well, so he's 6'5". I asked him to come to the stage. So here I am, 5'3". He's 6'5". We look ridiculous together. Right. And then I asked him to show me his hand. He shows me his hand. His hand is 3 inches larger than mine. And I simply raised the question, should we do anything physical the same way? No, it's ridiculous, right? I mean, I
Right.
can't hold the tennis racket, the golf club, anything, the tool, the way he does. His hand is much larger, and so on. So the world wasn't designed for both of us.
Yeah.
And the more different you are from the person who wrote the rule, I think the more important it is for you to change the rules so that it fits you better. An
Yeah.
example I use in my class, I say, when there's a decision to be made, same thing with all of us, that you have a group of people making the decision. Who are these people? And to whom
Right.
are you speaking? And does it still speak to you? I mean, the rules that your young mothers are worried about whether or not they should follow were written when I was your age.
Right.
Things have changed. It might not make
Right.
sense anymore. At any rate, so I raised the issue. Let's say an insurance company has to decide which drugs to cover with insurance. I believe they don't want to cover everything. Right? But so now you have a group of people. Let's imagine that they're lusty 50-year-old men, and they're deciding whether Viagra should be covered.
Right.
Okay, versus they're a group of nuns. All right. And that's what it always is. It's not, there's no decision that's made by anyone who's just like us. And those differences lead to different decisions. And if we stop worrying about doing the wrong thing, most people are sensible. I mean, you look at your baby, and at first everybody's scared to death. But let's deal with the 2 and 3 year olds. It's fine periodically to scream,
Yeah.
as long and your mother probably screamed at you. She wasn't always screaming at you. She kissed you, she held you. That by and large, as long as we show that we care, that we're there for the people we're there for, things are going to turn out. That at the end of the game, we don't take, it might be a fun study, take those who are really, really successful in life and
Yeah.
find out what their parents were like when they were 1, 2, 3 years. There's almost no
Yeah.
way of finding that out. But somehow
Yeah.
people are very resilient and get through all of that. I'm saying that, what happens with so many do-good young mothers is they don't realize that they need to take care of themselves,
Hmm.
the child. And so the example is when you're flying and, before the plane takes off and they tell you buckle your belt in. And then if need be, the oxygen mask, they don't say put it on your child first. Put it
Hmm.
on yourself. And
Right.
then, so if you can take care of yourself, there'll be more of you available to take care of your child.
I will definitely take that advice. Yeah, when I became a mom, all of a sudden these rules were thrown at me, and I all of a sudden like stopped and I said, "Wait, hold on, who made these rules? Is there a universal book that I should be purchasing? Because this does not work for our family and we're not going to do it.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that people need to understand that with almost anything we do, there's more latitude. That it doesn't have to be exactly. And
Right.
the
I like
exact,
that.
it's like the horses don't eat meat. Which horses? How much
Right.
mixed with how much grain? How hungry are the horses?
Yeah.
I think we should be living an about world, a
Right.
probable world, a maybe. It would seem that perhaps I should do this rather than, oh my God, if I don't do this, something terrible is going to
Right.
happen.
Which is what we think is going to happen
Yeah.
most of the time. But like I said, choices are something that I am not, when I have too many choices, I feel very overwhelmed. I remember
Yeah.
specifically on our honeymoon, we were in Florence and I hadn't picked a place to eat lunch. And I went into probably like 30 different restaurants. And again, was thinking about that while I was reading your book. Like, you think that the next one is just going to be like the
Right.
better one, or you don't want to miss out. Can you kind of go into
Yeah.
why do people do that?
Okay. Yeah. I can write another book just on decision making, but let
Mm-hmm.
me give you the bottom line first. So if people tune out as we're discussing it, they'll still have gotten something. Rather than worry about making the right decision, we should make the decision right.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way of knowing if a decision that you've made is the right decision. You don't
Mm-hmm.
know what alternative decisions would have resulted in, better, worse, different. And there's always another piece of information that could change the decision you're making. And then another, it's, but when you recognize that things in and of themselves are neither good nor bad, what makes them good or bad is the way we understand them. And so, so for me, Samantha, if you and I spent a lot of time together, you could make all the decisions. I don't care because I'm going to be happy no matter what. And if the food is awful, that's great. I won't eat as much.
Right.
And then I, won't regret having overeaten. And what does it mean for it to be the right, the
Yeah.
right restaurant? It could be the right restaurant, but the chef is a new chef because the
Yeah.
chef you had the last time got sick or, whatever.
Uh-huh. For sure.
And there's no reason to think that every chef in every restaurant is cooking at the top of their game every meal they
Yeah.
eat. Nobody does that, right? You have good days, bad days, good hours, and so on. So
Yeah. And
it's
yeah.
very freeing to know that you're not victim of outcomes. That
Yeah.
right now people think if there are good things, I have to kill myself, step on people, do what I can to get the good things, and run as fast as I can away from bad things. And when you recognize the things in and of themselves are not good, they're not bad, even that terrible fire that destroyed 80% of what I own over time has been a blessing. The
Yeah.
world gets ugly and ugly, and every Christmas, I sit back and just remember how
That.
nice most people are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there.
So, in kind of the same area of that, why do people feel safer when things are like labeled, sorted, categorized? Why
Well,
does ambiguity feel so threatening? And how can we kind of
well,
learn to sit
because
with it?
people think that they can know. They
Mm-hmm.
think that they should know. So
Mm-hmm.
then they suffer because they don't know. And
Right.
what my book tries to explain to people is that you can't know. So
Mm-hmm.
just give up the whole process is silly. That no matter what you're looking at, there are multiple ways of looking at it. Each of these, so even about a decision. So people get so stressed with the decision making. But let's say if I said to you, do you want to meet my friend Susie? She is wonderfully spontaneous. Okay. You're going to say yes. If
Sure.
I said
Yeah.
to you, do you want to meet my friend Susie? She's very impulsive. You're going to say no.
Yeah.
Spontaneous and impulsive are the same thing. Do you want to meet my friend Ellen? Hi. She is extraordinarily gullible, which I am. God, what's the matter with her? Her age and level of education. Scary. But you want to meet my friend Ellen? She's extremely trusting. Okay, the point being that every negative understanding of a behavior has an equally strong but oppositely
Positive.
balanced alternative. And
Right.
so every time we try to change things for ourselves, about ourselves, I don't want to be gullible. You don't want
Yeah.
to be impulsive. So you keep trying to change. I keep trying to change, and we're going to fail over and over again because
Right.
going forward, my intention is to be trusting. Yours is to be spontaneous. And so
Yeah.
when we recognize why people are doing what they're doing from their perspectives, our relationships improve, our relationship to ourself improves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the more we care about ourselves and understand ourselves, the less important so many of these things that we are worried about feel.
Yeah. So important. It's so true. And then, we're judging ourselves less, so we're judging others less, or,
Yeah.
vice versa, which is a really helpful thing as well. So this doesn't have to do with choice, but this is something that you had in your book that I thought I really need to ask her about this. You talked about the tear from cutting an onion is biochemically different than a tear from
Yeah.
joy.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
I don't
Tell
know.
me.
I can't really, haven't found the study. I didn't do the study. That's part of the mind body unity.
Hmm.
As one thing, whatever happens on any level is simultaneously happening on every level.
Right.
And so we just don't look closely enough. Why would
Right.
you, if you see a tear as a tear as a tear? But, it's not even a tear of happiness versus a tear of sadness. I'm sure a tear of big sad is different from a tear. It has to be that way.
Yeah.
You raise your hand, your whole body is different.
Right.
I put this in the book. I don't know if this is relevant to all, but it's a fun story. So I was in Kansas, God knows why, Kansas City, lovely place, but had never been there before. And the person I was with asked me, did I want to go to an iridologist? I wasn't sure what an iridologist was. I think it had something to do with the eyes and the iris. But I say yes to those things.
Sure.
Why not? So I go, and this iridologist looks in my eyes, and then she told me that I had a problem with my gallbladder. Well, at that time, I hadn't yet been thinking of the mind body unity. And of course, it seemed ridiculous. But then I went home, and lo and behold, I had a problem with my gallbladder. Everything is represented everywhere. We just don't have the technology strong enough to pick things up.
Interesting. So, how important do you think it is to surround
Really?
yourself with with mindful people?
Well, I think you can't always pick your relatives.
Yeah.
That the 50 years of research that we've been doing says to me that virtually all of us are mindless almost all the time.
Yeah.
So the people you want to pick are few and far between. I think better if you make yourself more mindful. And what you're getting at, I think in the book we have some evidence that mindfulness is contagious.
Hmm.
It's much, you feel better when you're around somebody who's mindful because they're not going to evaluate you. Because
Right.
implicitly you come to learn that she it must have made some sense, or else why would she have done it? And,
Yeah.
and you can either find the opposite way of looking at it, the rigid, consistent, impulsive,
Right.
spontaneous, so on, or just accept that it's there. But so they should be easier going. And so you're going to gravitate to these people anyway because they're going to be calming. We all have had, well, I don't know how old all of your listeners are. Eventually, they will all have had a friend who's neurotic. Oh my God,
Yes.
yeah, and that's fine. That person probably has other positive attributes, but then it's very rewarding for you to be the calming person for that person
Yeah. For that.
and help
That's great.
spread it.
Yeah. So, people, I guess, in this generation of any type, they would say you're using toxic positivity.
Yeah,
I heard you say like
no,
mindful optimism, and I like
yeah.
that way better because I don't
Others-
think it is toxic positive.
I mean, I think that at some point I'll debate one of these people.
Yay, I would love to see it.
What does it mean? You know, I guess positivity would be toxic if it were insincere.
Right.
So I was talking to a friend just the other day who has lymphoma. And
Hmm.
she said, I know I'm going to be positive. I said, that has no meaning.
Right.
Being positive doesn't mean that you say, I'm going to make believe there's nothing negative happening.
Right.
It means you're going to understand the limits to other people's understanding. That in her case, it was most people these days manage just fine and get through
Right.
cancer. It's not the death sentence it used to be, and so on. But yeah, if toxic positivity means pretending that something can only be understood as positive, and I
Right.
don't like the name, but fine. But what we need to understand is the understanding of it, whether positive, negative, or neutral, is in our heads. It's not in
Yeah.
it. Events are not good, bad, they're nothing
Right.
until we, understand them. I think when certain things happen, let's say you're married for a lot of years and then your husband dies or divorces, you find out he's having an affair or whatever. I don't think even the best of us would be able to, like with my house that burnt down, say, oh, well, who cares?
Right. Right.
But, but once you start understanding what's going on, and let's say with a divorce, we all want good relationships. For a relationship to be good, both parties have to be involved,
Right.
engaged in it.
Yeah.
And so if the other person was not feeding that part of the relationship, being somebody you could count on and enjoy and so on, you're really better off without the person. And you've been
Right.
alone anyway. You just didn't
True.
realize.
Yeah.
I find that there's nothing more lonely than being with people when you don't want to be there. But I'd
Yeah.
rather just be by myself and paint or watch a movie or whatever else.
So true.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that we need to understand that all of our emotions are a function of our thoughts.
Yeah.
And we can control our thoughts. And it doesn't mean we say something that we're going to take as bad as good. It means we're going to understand that nothing in and of itself is good or bad. I'm going to look and try to see the ways this might be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's great. So, a quote that I live by, it's my signature on my work emails, is we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. And it immediately came to mind while reading your book.
Sure.
What's your take on the
Now, Zoe Lewis wrote that song, and I quote the song in the book, and she's wonderful and very uplifting. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that people confuse taking what they do seriously and
Mm-hmm.
taking themselves too seriously. And I think that you want to not take yourself so seriously. That with all the great idea, hey, I thought of that first, who cares?
Yeah.
Most of the things, everything about that we experience is transient. It's here, it's gone already. For me, everything is a game. Everything. Now,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you were talking to me about some dread thing or whatever, I wouldn't say, well, let's play. But most of the time, I think there's nothing that prevents anything that we're doing from being enjoyable.
Yeah.
What prevents it from being enjoyable is the, oh my God, what if I get it wrong? Oh my God, what if I can't do it successfully? And so on.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can eliminate that, and part of the way to eliminate that is to recognize we really don't, no one's going to buy this, but they may once they think about it. We really don't want all the success we think that we want. So the example, I use two examples. Let me use a child example. So you have your child in the elevator and he's trying to press the button. He's not tall enough. What an exciting adventure. Mommy, can we go in the elevator again? And he's in the elevator. It's 6 months later, but he still can't press it. And so you pick him up and he presses the button. Eventually, he'll press it. The game is over. When was the last time you were excited about pressing the button in the elevator?
Yeah.
All
So
right.
true.
So what we need to understand is the challenge of whatever we're doing is what makes it fun.
Yeah.
Mastering is fun. Having mastered, and you want to rest on your laurels, that's fine. It's much more exciting to be learning new things.
Yeah.
So, the other example I use probably too frequently is a game of golf. Wouldn't it be wonderful, the golfer thinks, if I got a hole in one in every shot? Well, if
And
they
then it
did,
was
again, there'd be no game. And if
right.
you want to win, play tic-tac-toe against a 4-year-old.
Right.
None of us want that.
Right. Yeah.
So
It's great. So, besides being wrong, why do you think people are so afraid of change, even when they know they're capable of making it.
No, I don't think it's a matter of right and wrong. I think things are changing, and
Right.
people confuse the stability of their mindsets,
Hmm.
stability of the underlying phenomenon.
Hmm.
It's changing. Your relationship is changing. You're changing. Your kids are changing. It's like, that you're eating and you're gaining weight and you don't notice it until your pants don't fit. Your pants don't go from fitting to not fitting with one meal.
Right.
We are changing in all different ways and we should embrace change. You know,
Hmm.
what people don't understand, I've said this already, but that uncertainty is the rule, not the exception. Everything is changing, so we can't know. And what we want
Hmm.
to do is embrace that uncertainty, exploit the powers that it gives us. It makes everything interesting.
Yeah,
And we're
truly.
constantly holding things still. We do this when we talk to ourselves about, oh, I'm such a whatever. You're not. You said something stupid. Whatever you did, you have a lifetime to change that.
Hmm.
We don't appreciate why we do what we do. And this I've already said, but it's interesting to me, Samantha. I've been doing research on all of this for so many years. This one thought turns out to be more important to me than all of the life and death findings we have. The very simple notion that behavior makes sense from the actor's perspective, or else he or she wouldn't do it.
Right.
No one wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to be obnoxious, aggressive, mean. So when they're
Yeah.
doing these things, why? Well, from their perspective, it makes some sense. And
Hmm.
the same thing for us. We have to go easier on ourselves. But that led to a study that we did that I've already alluded to, but we give people 200 or 300 words, behavior descriptions, and we say, well, those things you've always tried to change about yourself and you keep failing. So for me, it would be gullible, impulsive. Okay, people circle as many as they want. Then you turn the page over, and now people are told, circle those things you really value about yourself. My being trusting and spontaneous. As long as I value being spontaneous, I'm going to be impulsive at times.
Hmm.
As long as I value being trusting, I'm going to be gullible.
Right.
Reason you're doing it is the positive. So if you and I are going to spend a lot of time together and you want me to stop being so gullible, you have to persuade me to stop being trusting
Hmm.
because that's
Yeah.
why I'm being what I'm being. And chances are you're not going to want to do that. It's kind of nice to have
Yeah.
trust.
That's a great perspective. I love that spit on it.
So it's clear, or should be clear at this point to your listeners, that I think that we should all be mindful virtually all of the time. Mindfulness is easy, it's fun, it's what we're doing when we're having fun.
Hmm.
So it's energy begetting, not consuming. So often around this time in a podcast, Samantha, person be looking for me getting tired. It's been an hour. No, they have to
Yeah.
pull me off stage because I get
No.
excited. All right. So being mindful is energy beginning. When you recognize that our likes and dislikes are so easily changed, there was a study with women in football. They don't like
Hmm.
watching football. We had people who didn't like classical music, people who didn't like rap music, bunch of people not liking things. And we'd have one group do it. So the football, they're just watching it.
Hmm.
Another group, they're told notice one new thing.
Okay.
Another group notice three new things. And they could be noticing the rear ends of the football players. Okay, notice six new things. Well, it turns out the more you notice, the more you like the thing you're
Hmm.
noticed. So how do you get engaged? Somebody who's sitting back waiting for something to pull them, you can do anything and just
Right.
notice things about it. And you'll become engaged. And now, because to end where we started, the mind body unity, turns out that this active noticing is not only energy beginning, but it's literally and figuratively enlivening. So
Yeah.
we did the early studies where we took elderly people, we had them become more mindful, engage in this active noticing, and they live long. So it's all good. There's no downside to it.
So, what is your thoughts with technology and cell phones and social media with
Everybody
mindfulness?
wants to put somebody down.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I was in South Africa and I was on this news show, TV show. And before we started, the newscaster said to me, can I ask you something, Professor Langer? As you can ask me anything, but no, I'm going to tell you. And you
Yeah.
might not hear whatever you want to hear. So he says, well, what do you think? And he was sure I would be on the parent side. The kids being on their cell phones all day long. And I said, I don't have data for this. We should gather some. But my belief is if you have the alternative of an interesting, exciting, nurturing, real life conversation,
Hmm.
be on your phone, you're going to choose the conversation. And rather than tell kids to get off their phones, I think parents need to up their games to make whatever it is more interesting. Right.
I love that.
Yeah. But the idea, people have often asked me, is technology making us more mindless? Nothing makes us mindless or mindful. We can approach, no matter what we're doing, giving a podcast, watching a television program, reading a book, talking to Chat GPT, whatever numbers current. You can do all of that mindlessly or mindfully. The important piece is not what you're doing so much as how you're doing it.
Right.
And if you're doing it mindfully, the system is coming alive. If you're doing it mindlessly, the body and mind are being turned off.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I definitely have never heard that perspective of the parents really need to kind of up their games to give the kids something, that they need to be focused on. So that is,
I was writing this book. I haven't gotten very far with this one yet. It was the backstory of nursery rhymes. But if
okay.
you just take The Boy Who Cried Wolf,
Hmm.
and so the story for The Boy Who Cried Wolf is supposed to be, if you don't really have a problem, don't
Yeah.
cry, because when you do have a problem, no one's going to listen. That's terrible,
Right.
right? No, I think that, why is the kid crying? Why does he need attention?
Yeah.
If we go back and we say whatever the child, the parent, the grandparent, we ourselves are doing makes sense, or else we wouldn't do it,
Hmm.
then I think that we'd end up kinder to each other.
Yeah, I love that. That definitely makes a lot of sense and so true. And as I am a high school teacher as well, so we do always try to find the, why is to go back to the attention? Why is the kid searching for the attention?
Yeah,
What
but
is happening?
as a teacher, imagine that in the past you're teaching addition and you say, how much is 1 + 1? And little Johnny says 1. What most teachers these days would look at little Johnny like he's an idiot, thereby teaching all the other kids to demean little Johnny.
Right.
But now recognizing that you don't know, what you
Hmm.
would say is, how did you come to that? And then he'd say, well, he takes 1 wad of chewing gum plus 1 wad of chewing gum. He ends up with 1 wad of chewing gum. So it's all a matter of, having more respect for each other.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
that also leads us to have more respect for ourselves.
Yeah. So for someone listening who wants to begin living a more mindful body, what's one small shift that they can make today, right now?
Well, it's small and it's big. It's recognizing that we don't know and that it's okay not to know. So you don't know, you tune in. I mean, if you were going to come to my house and you've never been here before, you don't have to practice anything. You'd walk in the door and say, look at that. What is that? Did she do that painting? What book is she reading? Things would naturally occur. Things don't naturally occur when we think we know. So again, if you think 1 + 1 is 2, there's nothing to think about. When you realize all the different things 1 + 1 could equal.
Could be.
Somebody sent me something the other day. They said, if you take one pizza and you add one pizza, you have two pizzas. But if you take one lasagna and you add one lasagna, 1 + 1 is 1. It's just a bigger lasagna. All right, apropos of little. But the point of it is making one change. Now, people know they don't know, so they don't even have to change that. All they
Yeah,
have to do is breathe a sigh of relief saying, good, I'm not supposed to know.
it's okay.
Can't know.
Although some people might not know they don't
Well,
know.
those are the people you want to watch out for. But and when you're with them, you can't let them bully you or intimidate you, because now you know that they
That
can't.
they don't know.
Science only gives us probabilities, not absolute.
Oh my gosh, that is interesting. I just love that so much. And I will definitely go with that mentality. And that's where I think a lot of people have the imposter syndrome where they don't know they don't think they're enough. I mean, even leading up to this interview, I thought, oh my goodness, she's so much smarter than me. She's so much more accomplished than me. I'm going to be like,
Okay,
and
so here's a good place for us to end, Samantha.
yeah.
That if you go on YouTube, I have this song that I sing with my students behind me. And it opens up and I say, I can't sing, but I enjoy singing. Why shouldn't I sing? There are other things I can do. And then with me, 100 Harvard students are singing, everybody can't do something, but everyone can do something else. Everyone doesn't know something. Okay, so the point is, yes, there are things that first of all, I'm much older than you are. And at your age, I knew many things that you don't know now. But you also know many things that I don't know. And what you need to do is, if you're always learning, that's all you can do.
Yes, that is a learning mentality for sure for me. I am always loving to learn, which is why I started the podcast, is to learn
And
from
why you
others.
teach, because you want to
Yes.
spread the joy. Beautiful.
Yes. All right. Well, that is a great place to end. Thank you so much. If there is one thing that I'm walking away with, it's this: your body listens to your thoughts more than you realize. The labels, the language, the habits, we don't question, they shape us. But the good news, we can start changing that by simply paying attention. So thank you again to the incredible Dr. Ellen Langer. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure. It was fun. Very
I
well.
appreciate this. Like I said, I have read all your books, so this was really cool to just sit down and have a conversation and feel like I got the, in depth, and now all my listeners get to as well.
All right.
Yes. So if you love this episode, hit follow so you never miss a new one, and take a moment to leave a review. It helps more moms and non-moms find these meaningful conversations. You can follow me on Instagram at @therunningwinemom_. And where can the listeners find you?
Me?
Yes.
I don't want to be found. No. You just
Okay.
Ellen Langer, and it's all over the place.
I will link it
Like
all.
ellenlanger.com or ellenlanger.me. But now with the internet, it's very easy to find anybody you want to find. But
Yes.
rather than find me, it would be good for people to find some of these books.
Yes.
Because I write them in the hope that they will have a positive influence on people's lives, which you can't have if they don't read them.
Right. And I will link all of those and share them as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you are all amazing. Until next time, keep running, keep sipping, keep being mindful, and keep embracing the joy of motherhood. Cheers, and I'll be back next Tuesday.